So work teams. I may have been in not-for-profit organizations most of my career, but I'll lead you into a second. Important secret, not-for-profit is also not for loss. We need to meet payrolls. We have this funny little thing on our income statements called surplus. Other industries call that profit, but we just have a few restrictions on what we could do with it. And I know that one of the hardest things I had to do in a long career in academia was build work teams. Hiring a faculty, supporting a faculty, keeping a faculty up to date is a challenge. And I used to think it was the hardest thing in the world till I met this industry and recognized the challenges that you have in getting people to do things that have never been done before at price points that have never been conceived of before, with regulations of a volume that have never been known before. You have also been about as good as any industry in the business of recognizing that you have to find talent where talent is. So that means that you have spent less time worrying about the gender of your talent. You have been you've spent less time worrying about the chromatic superstructure of your talent. And you have done a rather remarkable job of bringing incredible work teams together. The problem is you're all in an industry and you're competing with each other, and so you have to do it at least as well as your competition. And what we're out to do today is to tell you that there is an opportunity to do that. We will focus very heavily on what is one of the major issues of the day, and that is integrating a larger number of women into the process of taking us all where we want to go. We will recognize the culture of this community by making our discussions based on really solid information, data, research that will give you a sense of how this connects to your bottom line, how it connects to profit, how it connects to surplus, how it connects to success. But I want you to really think hard as you listen to what you'll hear today that this is not the only problem for which these tools will be useful to you. Going forward, we're going to see other demographics that are going to fall by the wayside but still hold nuggets of talent. That may include new immigrants to the United States, and almost certainly within the next 10 years will include men. And it will include men because they've stopped going to college in the numbers they used to go to college. They will almost certainly come back to college later, but then you're going to have to deal with people who got their bachelor's and advanced degrees later in life. And everything you hear today, whether you are male or female, senior leadership, or hoping someday to be senior leadership, will be useful in that 10 or 15 year out period where we're also dealing with a different demographic that needs to be integrated, needs to be mined for talent. And so that shall be what you'll hear from me, at least at this point. And I want to turn to Brad McLain, who will start off the process of giving you a sense of what the research shows about how what we're going to talk about can make a difference in your bottom line. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. I do have some slides, if we can get those up. And I believe this is the clicker. Great. Wonderful. It's great to be back in space, figuratively speaking. I did work with the Space Shuttle program when Wayne Hale was at the helm, and then later at the Science Mission Directorate for the robotic reconnaissance of the solar system. But I haven't been to a space conference in over 10 years, so I'm really glad to be back and talking about this stuff. But here today, I'm actually wearing the hat of a social scientist for the National Center for Women in IT, which is information technology. We call it NCWIT. And I want to talk to you today about innovation, diversity, and unconscious bias, by starting with a very simple proposition, but a powerful idea that we're all probably in agreement about, that innovation requires diversity. As we all know, innovation itself is a very messy process, and social scientists, many of them that I work with, have been looking at how the human mind does innovation and how they work together to do it. We know it's a messy process. We know that there's no one magic recipe to make it work, but we do know this. Innovation requires diversity of thought, also known as functional diversity. It requires diversity of worldviews, opinions, perspectives, in short, a diversity of people. We also know, backing up one, that there's been an emphasis, traditionally, on hiring the best and the brightest, filling the pipeline with the best talent at the individual level. But recently, that assumption has been challenged, especially with some exciting research over the last 5 years, by a number of social science teams to ask the question, does the composition of technical teams matter? Instead of focusing on the individual, the granularity of the individual, why not look at the dynamics of groups together? Across all industries, hundreds of studies, thousands of people, including tech and aerospace. And we can say confidently, really beyond a shadow of a doubt, not surprisingly, that yes, indeed, it does matter. Diversity increases and benefits creativity and innovation. The greater diversity a team has, the better able it is to solve complex problems faster than homogeneous groups. And it doesn't just stop there. It also includes productivity and efficiency. It includes sales and revenues. It includes all of the business actions that are important to all of you here today. Diversity of different kinds. Racial diversity, ethnic diversity, and very important to NCWIT and my work, gender diversity. In fact, there was one really interesting study I want to bring up that asked the question if the IQs of the individuals on a work team could predict the collective intelligence of a work team. And this study found something very interesting. It could not. But the collective intelligence of a work team could be predicted by the number of women on the work team. Is this surprising? The women are saying, yeah, tell me something I don't know, right? Well, it's not just that women are smarter. Maybe that's true. We don't know. But it has to do with the dynamics of the team working together. The presence of diversity means that there's disruptive thought, that there's challenges, that we do not have like-minded teams assembling together. We have differently minded teams working together. And this, apparently, is enhanced by the presence of women. Very interesting. Now, we know innovation is important. We know that diversity is important for innovation. So how is the aerospace industry, in particular, doing at gender diversity? The answer is not too good. Actually, I'm missing some slides. I don't know what happened to a few of these. If we could back it up. Sorry, tech folks in the back. We know yeah, there's one in between, but I'll skip it. The aerospace industry, as my graph would have beautifully shown, has hovered around 20 to 30% of gender diversity, women participation, for the last 25 to 30 years. This is not surprising to us. Look around this conference. You can see the evidence of it here. And it's not surprising to us at NCWIT either, because we know from a national scale that women comprise 57% of total occupations in the US, but only 26% of technology jobs, only 19% of software developers, and a scarce 5% of leadership positions in technology-related jobs. So the fact that the aerospace industry is hovering around 25% women's participation is on par. When Google released its data last year, it revealed that only 17% of its total workforce was women. And other companies followed suit with the data transparency movement to show what they had. Here's some evidence from SendGrid, which is a little bit better. Actually had 22%. If you look down at the bottom, many more women in leadership positions than the national average. Okay? So the aerospace industry is on par with this. Okay, not the slides I was expecting. Let's look at the aerospace industry again, where this data comes from. The top aerospace employers by state, in order, are California, Washington, Texas, Ohio, and Alabama. If we break that down per capita to see where the concentrations are, those states in order are Washington, Kansas, Alabama, Maryland, and Colorado. That's where all of the data that I'm talking about are coming from. There's the one that I was hoping to show earlier. 25, 30 years of consistently low, at least we can say it's consistently low, women in the aerospace industry. It hasn't changed much. Despite the education, despite the efforts, despite the big STEM movement, we haven't seen the needle move very much for this participation of women. We also notice that the aerospace workforce is more mature than other industries. As of 2012, the big orange line right in the middle, the largest age cohort for aerospace, men and women, was 45 to 54 years old. Again, look around you at this conference today, and we'll see evidence of that. And it's getting older. In 1992, which is the pale green line, the largest age cohort in aerospace was 25 to 34-year-olds. Today, the largest age cohort is combined 45 to 64 years old. If we look at women in particular, the largest women age cohort in aerospace is 35 to 44 years old. So we know two things. Aerospace has a challenge attracting the best and the brightest who are the youngest, and attracting, retaining, and advancing women. And this is something NCWIT and our research team knows quite a bit about. So I want to discuss that next. What is going on here? Oh, and this slide. 30% of the aerospace workforce is age 55 or above. If you look at the same graph for industry in general, not just aerospace, the lines are much more gradual. It's not nearly as drastic as for aerospace. Now, part of this is the baby boom dynamics, as the baby boomers move through their careers. But that's true for the industry at large. For aerospace, something else is going on, and it's this challenge of getting the younger and the women into the workforce. So what's going on here? As we always say, let's cut to the chase. We aren't saying women are broken, and we're not saying men are the enemy. And I certainly want to leave you with a message today that this is not a women's issue. This is an industry bottom line good business issue. The culprit behind the lack of women in these industries is societal bias, implicit bias, or unconscious bias. You might have heard of it before. It's a hot topic in the media these days. The good news is we know what to do about it, and we have lots of resources to help others do something about it. If you Google Project Implicit, you will arrive at a website that was created by a Harvard team that contains surveys of all kinds of bias. We've all taken it at NCWIT. I encourage you to take it, use it as a training tool. You can take gender bias among them, and this is some of the data from it. Men and women alike, even women who work at NCWIT, are biased in these ways. This chart shows that men are associated with science more readily and women with the liberal arts. Not surprising. Those are the cultural roles we've been indoctrinated to fill. So, how come? Implicit bias, societal bias, or unconscious bias. What is it? They are mental models or shortcuts we call schemas that we all have for parsing the tremendous amount of information coming into the senses, into our brains from the world outside. If an object rolls down the street, it has 4 wheels, a steering wheel, and an engine. I know it's a car, even if I've never seen that car before, because it fits my mental model for what a car is. I cannot live, and you cannot live without these schemas in our heads. Part of our education is learning to get highly developed schemas. The problem comes when our schemas filter the wrong information out. Like when it comes to forming our ideas about who a leader is or isn't, or who an aerospace engineer or entrepreneur is or isn't. And that causes us to misinterpret and often disadvantage people who don't fit into those schemas. We all bring unconscious bias to work because we're all products of the same society. And these manifest in 2 general ways in the workplace. Subtle dynamics, which are interpersonal, individual interactions, which we've all experienced, and overt or institutional barriers, which are hardwired into the business practices and the DNA of a company. And they are insidious because they're the most unconscious of all. These bring up things that you might have heard about before. Challenges for recruiting, retaining, and advancing women. Hiring. There's a tendency for people to select people who are like me. Well, that leads to homogenous, similar mindsets, and that's, as we know, an enemy of innovation. Interpersonal effects, you might have heard some of these catchphrases from the research. Micro-inequities, stereotype threat, tokenism. There's a whole host of them that we look at in our research. Task assignment is a big one. We see women shunted to less creative, less leadership roles than their male counterparts. Basically low status, low pay roles. Performance appraisals, looking at that, we find that men are more often appraised for their effort and skill, or women are tended to be praised for their collaboration abilities, their communication, or arriving at a high level due to luck. And of course, promotion and advancement. The criteria for promotion is often modeled on a command and control white male leadership structure as opposed to any other model, making it very difficult for women to rise. And when they do rise through a company, they are leaving in greater numbers than any other cohort because they have no peers. Even when you think they've made it in the corner office, the vice president or the president of a company, a CEO, They are more likely to leave statistically than a new woman coming in her 20s right out of college. So I did say there was some good news, and Jill's going to deliver it because we have lots of information and resources about what to do, and that's what NCWIT is about. Not only doing the research, but also helping companies like yours to solve the problems. Okay.
Jill?
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm Jill Rucky, and I am from NCWIT as well. I spent most of my career as a Bell Labs engineer in the heart of innovation, and I'm a big champion for all kinds of people participating in the future of our technology innovation. I am supposed to share with you basically what I know about NCWIT and what companies have done successfully, and I'm going to do that. But I know that people don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care. So let me tell you a little story. This happens to be Ashley. There's a little arrow pointing to her, sitting in her space bedroom at age 6. Ashley discovered space by looking at the stars when she was little. She discovered physics in high school and came home declaring that she wanted to be an astrophysicist. I couldn't even say the word, I had to practice. This little girl decided to take a course at age 17 and elected an engineering course. And while others were building bridges, she designed a space with some 3D modeling tools and spent about 3 weeks on a project that was supposed to only take a few hours. She said that the world's going to need more space bases to reach low Earth orbit so you could explore and discover. She was sure she was going to go to Mars, and she wanted to be one of the first people to colonize on another planet. Ashley's now 19. She's studying physics in her sophomore year of college. Just last week, I heard that she's changing majors. She said she doesn't see herself in it, and she doesn't think it's creative enough. Such a shame. And how do I know all this? Because Ashley's my daughter. And I can't tell you how much I want her to be in this, and I know that this is an exciting field. I can feel the energy in the room. I hear all about it. And I want you to have people like this kind of energy and talent. I know that it's not just about women, it's about young ladies, young men. And when I talk to my counterparts in computer science, I've sat at events like this with the people who invented the internet, and it wasn't Al Gore, but other people that actually did invent the internet say to me, we need another Sputnik, and reference space as the way to get energy back into the field. So what do we do? How many other Ashleys are out there? Let me change slides. Do you just push it? There. Let me tell you so that's why I care. Let me tell you what I know. Pat asked me to talk about a program called NCWIT Pacesetters. We have 650 member organizations that are part of NCWIT, and they join because they want to make themselves great places to work or great universities. They want the talent. 30 of them are selected every 2 years, and I envisioned this program and implemented it in 2010, and now we're just going on our 3rd cohort. These organizations are made up of startups, corporations, and universities, biggest brands out there. And they want to work together to challenge the status quo. They know that things aren't working the way that they're going, and they want to think differently, and they do it well. They fix things that they've learned to take something that works in one area and use it in another. They break things that are in need of being broken, even if it's difficult and steeped in tradition or politically not wise to talk about. And they also build things from scratch, things that have never been done before, and they take big risks. So I want to talk a little bit about what Pacesetters do, just to give you a flavor that this is possible to fix. We can do this together. So first of all, one idea is UT Austin had forever been working with a minimum grade point of 3.8 to get into their IT and computer science degrees. It was not something that their university would ever consider changing. With work and time and developing relationships with their admissions, they were able to put 40 slots open for diverse candidates, young women and men, that would allow them to recruit locally within the community, and predominantly the Hispanic community. They were part of Pacesetters. Another idea here is AT&T was with Pacesetters and worked on looking at all of the women who were in their creative technical career path and left, but still were with the company, and how could they invite them back, and what would that look like to get them back on the tech career path. And so they did a really successful 2-year effort. The hardest part was talking to the supervisors about letting those women go from those operational roles, but all the women needed was to be invited back and to remember that they were technologists at heart. They wanted to contribute, and they were really successful with that program. Third, Indiana University was having trouble with their informatics degrees and getting women to participate in both those really the technical side as well as the systems management side. And they decided to focus on the 3,000 freshmen that were on campus already, instead of just working with parents by newsletters or by sending a letter from the dean, which they typically did. They decided to really focus in on the women on campus. They got the freshmen and sophomores that were already in the major and fresh and really excited about computing, and they asked them to participate in one-on-one sessions. They invited them in, they brought food, that always helps. And they went from 75 women in their majors to 150 in 18 months. Then they decided to try it again. Same story. They went from 150 to 300 in the next 2 years. That's a significant impact over time. It builds a pipeline that all of you can use to hire students. These skills in math and science are really needed in our country. And then fourth, another idea here, CU Boulder created a new major called the Bachelor of Arts in Computer Science. A lot of you are familiar with the BS of computer science, and companies usually filter or don't hire unless you have a BS. And so they created a BA because they knew it would engage more women. And in fact, it brought in all kinds of people. There were people in neuroscience that felt they needed to know computational models in order to be successful in their business. It brought in people from law and all kinds of different, of course, biology, where women often go and major but can't find jobs. So there's this talent pool now that has the skill sets. And I want to open this up for space as well, and to get more women to start thinking about space and exploration, either from a startup or a corporate environment, even an academic environment, as a pathway. Right now, they just don't. They just don't even think about that. And computing degrees are increasing for young women, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So that's a little bit about it, and then these are the organizations that are part of the Pacesetters program. So you can see it works at small companies, big companies, and also in universities. The reason it works is we focus down to the organizational level. So getting this really big, hairy social bias problem that Brad talked about and making it right down to the individual level within an organization is why it works. It makes a difference. It holds people accountable. And you'll notice the unique experience of it, should you participate. It allows organizations to do one really important thing. They compete against the problem together and not each other. They're not trying to do a shell game where they take, talent from one major to another or take talent from one company to another. Just when I heard you guys talking up here and about, the launch, what you learn in the middle of a launch, success or failure, will help all of you. And that's true when you have a young discipline like this new space. And it's the same for computing, which is only about 40 years old. So we're still inventing that industry as well. And then I want to make one more point. It's not just about raw numbers of women. In fact, it's really not about women at all. It's more about what kind of work people can do and the contributions that women can make, being half the population, when they work alongside men, and they're allowed to bring their full selves. And what can they do when they get there into these jobs? This means paying attention to the kinds of jobs they take, the leadership roles that are available, the innovation that they participate in. It means making sure women in undergraduate programs are participating in really high-level courses and speaking about their technical work, which they don't usually do. It means making sure young girls like Ashley see the space industry as one that needs and welcomes their creativity and their really unique perspectives. We can do this. We know how. As far as I know, there is not one space organization that's a member of NCWIT, so Brad and I are really out of our element here. Well, he's not, but I certainly am. And I know that all of you are not social. Is anyone in here a social scientist? There are 4. But anyway, most of you are not, and so I'm a practitioner, and this is what we do. And so we're interested in having you participate with us and forming some kind of relationship so we can change this for girls like Ashley, but for all of us to be more innovative because we all win. Thanks.
You can keep that. So now we want to move to some practical examples in the space sector from people who've worked with these issues. And calling on you first, Doug, if you could give us a sense of some nuggets from your own experience.
Sure, I would love to. This is a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I think all of you would understand why. I think all of us understand that the great things that we do, and those are the things we're here to talk about and we are excited about and passionate about, are all done by people. And to have the right workforce, to have the right team is critical in executing anything that we do. And for those of us who are proceeding through our careers, in our latter stages of our careers, it's also critically important that we leave behind a business and an industry that's vibrant and sustainable. And if you look at some of the demographics that were talked about earlier, we're not on that path as an industry. We are on a path of sort of running out of altitude and airspeed, to use that metaphor, in terms of having a workforce that's going to be able to take us to the next level. Because for the industry to grow, and for some of these things we're talking about to happen, you've got to have the people to go do it. And so there's clearly a business imperative associated with all this around having the ability to innovate, having the kinds of folks that are able to provide that diverse thought and innovation, which we're focused on here. But keep in mind, there's the aging profile, there's the competitive forces at work. Look at all the tech industry that's growing out there. So when we look out there as a tech company and see the Facebooks and Blue Origins and Virgin America and Virgin Galactic, and look at SpaceX right down the street from us. There's a lot of people just in Los Angeles competing for talent. So that is also what drives the need to get a process down that improves it. So some of the things that we've been doing over the last 5 years, our CEO really set us on a course, Wes Bush, about that time, to focus on diversity and inclusion as a fundamental part of our business. So over that time, we've worked across the entire pipeline. We make a lot of investments in education. So what place we can all start is putting our own time and putting money into K through 12 programs to encourage the proliferation and understanding of the science, technology, engineering, and math principles, and show that that's an attractive area for kids to be. So we invest millions in that, and in fact, many of you may be familiar with the Zero G Teachers program that we did a few years ago. That was the beginning of many other programs that we do that are focused on that. The next portion of it is interns, and really putting a lot of energy into the universities. And a few years ago, we were kind of all over the map. We recruited from universities everywhere. It was kind of where people happen to have relationships and so on. We, over the last couple of years, have refocused our energies and resources on about 10 universities, where we basically assign executive leadership like myself and my colleagues, where we have a direct role and responsibility in interfacing with that university, working with the leadership at the university to develop talent, understand where the talent is, help align the investments that the company makes in education programs. So bringing those interns out and getting them into the workforce is critical. We brought in 800 interns this year from around the country, around those 10 universities, and 50% of those were people of color and females. So we really understand that we've got to work the pipeline, and that's something we've been doing for the last few years, and this last year was our record number. You then start to move into hiring. The same practices and the same framework has helped a lot in doing that. And then once folks move into the company, it's the retention. There's some retention data in there, and it's not great. There's a lot of competitive opportunities out there, a lot of other companies doing exciting things, so we have to retain our talent and help them grow. And then as people get into the management ranks, in leadership, we have to be willing to make some tough calls and go with candidates and folks that maybe we're not as comfortable with as far as what risk, or pushing them to a higher level, or taking someone who's 25 and putting them in a job that's previously only been held by people in their 30s or 40s. We have to push people faster up through the system in order to fill that bathtub that you saw in the unique demographic of aerospace. So those make it tough. Those are tough day-to-day decisions. But Wes was very clear with us 5 years ago when he set us on this course, and he's holding each of us accountable in terms of taking ownership of that. The wraparound for that as well that happens across all these phases that is critical for diversity is what we call employee resource groups. And I think many companies have this sort of notion of company-funded and encouraged groups that focus and give a chance for different diverse elements of the culture to coalesce. So we have an African-American ERG group, gays and lesbians, Hispanics, all up to about 14 of these that are organized around doing things out there socially and just networking to help people feel as if they have an affinity in a group near them that they're familiar with. That also is aligned with our conference attendance. Each of us in the director and vice president cadre are responsible for going to 2 diversity conferences a year and spending a few days there and interacting with people and speaking and investing our time. So it's a big investment in time, but again, look at those numbers. As an industry, we're not going to survive if we don't do those sort of things. So we're really proud of the results we're getting. We've increased the number of people of color in our vice president ranks by 85% over the last 5 years. The directors, women, are up 30%. For vice presidents is up 60%, and in the area of directors for people of color we're up 20%. So we're starting to see the effect, but it is a long road. We've got a long way to go, as some of that data indicated, as an industry, and certainly in our area as well.
So now let's hear some nuggets from Melissa, if you could fill us in on some of your experience.
As Brad and Jill talked about, it doesn't lead to a diversity of thought. So the 2 programs that ULA has implemented is first is BLAST, Building Leadership and Sustaining Talent. It's a leadership development program meant to fill our executive pipeline, targeted at mid-level career professionals. It is a highly selective program, and it's also a pressure test. We take 6 individuals every 2 years and build them into a team and put them into stretch assignments. It's intentionally meant to stretch their thought, their experience, and their exposure to the company. It's early exposure to the business and the financial side of a company, to our senior executives, to our CEO, to what does it take to really build a company for the future. The second program that we have is called Ambassadors. This is for our newer entry-level professionals, but very similar targets in terms of our objectives to build diversity of experience, to bring employees to events, into teams, and into meetings that normally 5 years ago, we wouldn't have a new employee in the company sitting in with our senior executives to talk about our employee survey results. Now we do. I have 2 women who are here with me today, one from BLAST, one from Ambassadors. This is all about the diversity of experience. 5 years ago, we might have had several senior executives. Now we partner and mentor with our employees across the company. So not only are we crossing disciplines, we're crossing sites, and we're also crossing levels within the company, breaking down the barriers and bringing the diversity of thought and building bridges throughout the company. One of the other things that we've seen as a benefit from these companies is actually career acceleration. So as Doug had mentioned, and we've seen in the data, the demographics aren't great. We do have a bathtub, so I think we are trying to figure out how do we build our next generation of leaders, how do we retain our best and brightest employees. And one of these ways is exposing employees to different experiences, to not picking the same 10 people to attend a meeting or the same conference year after year. So we have seen very effective results from this career acceleration. The BLAST program graduated 5 people last year. 80% of those people are now in management, probably slightly earlier than they would have been otherwise. The 6 people currently in the program will graduate next year, and we're expecting similar results about moving into management and leadership within our company. As far as ambassadors, we've covered over 200 events in the last 2 years, which is really a very high number for our company and is a significant change in how we're approaching our industry and the aerospace community. Both of these programs also allow us to build allies. The people in these programs build teams and networks of allies and people who can talk about the unconscious bias and begin to address it within our company. So one of the excellent benefits of the groups is to create a smaller team within a relatively large aerospace company. We do provide coaching and mentoring, both individual and for the teams. This is one of the support systems that we have in place to help the employees grow. This is not a trial by fire. This is an opportunity to get out of your comfort zone and to see what the future may hold. For me personally, I am very committed to continuing to coach and mentor these programs. I think it's very important, not only for what it has done for me, but what it's doing for the company, what it's doing for our bottom line, and most importantly, for the people in our programs. It helps define purpose at work, and it gives meaning to what each of us do each day. Thank you.
So, Will, you get to be the cleanup person.
All right, I'll do my best to follow in some big footsteps there.
Okay, have at it.
First, I'll begin by saying a thanks and paying some compliments to Pat and Ariane and to you, Mike, for having the initiative to make this panel. I think one way in which our industry is extraordinarily not diverse is in its conference programming. And this is not a panel I've seen before, so thank you for trying something new. I hope that all of you as audience members will be frank and forthcoming in your feedback about how this went and how we could do it better. I'm happy to share with you a few stories of what we're doing at Virgin Galactic to sort of make our own way towards improving some of these numbers and hopefully benefiting the community, but certainly benefiting us as a company. We are a company at a fairly different scale than my colleagues that you've just heard from. I just learned our entire company is smaller than the summer intern class at Northrop Grumman. So we have some small sample size. Put that flag next to everything here. But at a more general level, I'll say, as a relatively small company and as a relatively new company, we certainly don't have answers to all of these questions. What we do have are experiments. And I've always found that the new space community in particular follows this ethos of test early, test often. And so that's kind of what we're doing in this field of diversity space. When I think about hiring the best possible workforce, whether it's for my company or whether it's for the United States as a nation, I sort of break the problem into 3 different chunks. One is making sure that the young people are entering into the pool. The second is making sure that the people in the pool actually want to come and work on your company, your project, your mission, whatever it is. And then the third is taking the people that already work for you and making them better, unlocking all their potential. And certainly we at Galactic are at least dipping our toes into each of those 3 different activities. On the first one, in terms of inspiring people, well, first of all, I like to believe that all of us who work in the realm of human spaceflight are in that business. I think all of you have seen children's eyes light up as they watch launches and things like that. And I would hope that as the industry fundamentally changes, whether it's Virgin Galactic changing it, or Blue Origin, or Boeing, or everyone else, all of us together changing it, and more of those young people see the direct personal relevance to them, I think that effect will be magnified. As of today, only 551 people have been to space. About 90% of them are men. An overwhelming percentage of them come from only 2 countries, which means that for the vast majority of the 7 billion people on the planet right now, there has never been an astronaut who looked anything like them. And I think that that's going to change, and it's going to change very quickly, and I think that that'll have some huge effects. So human spaceflight at the top level is doing that. I think at a more specific level, we are trying to do that with sort of direct outreach. Our staff members are in the schools. We particularly focus on some of the local communities around where our staff live, but increasingly through tools like Google Hangouts and science fairs and things like that, we're able to directly connect with students. We typically start at the middle school age. We haven't done as much to date with elementary school, and perhaps that's something we need to learn more about. I would be very interested in hearing from my colleagues and others in the room if we need to start younger. And then we try and carry that all the way through at least the undergraduate level. As you heard in my introduction, at a personal level, I'm very involved in an organization called SEDS, the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, which is the largest student-run space organization in the world. It's what got me my start in the industry, and so I'm certainly trying to pay back to the organization by encouraging other young people. But at Galactic, we also offer a number of scholarships for people, some that are particularly targeted towards various underserved populations, but others of which are just open to try and encourage people, to try and help people financially pay for the training that is required to come and be valuable members of the workforce at any of our companies. And like you just heard from Melissa, a big part of that also is it's not just a financial aspect, it's all about coaching and it's all about mentoring. In one of our grand experiments, we did our first scholarship class. We awarded, don't quote me, but something on the order of 10 scholarships, and I think at the end of the first year, half of those students had changed majors. And so we realized just writing them a check was insufficient. Now they're scheduled for bi-weekly or at least monthly phone calls with a member of our staff that they have handpicked that tells them something about either the field they're already working in, or some of them have deliberately chosen someone who works in a different field. It's sort of like what you were talking about with the finance people talking to the engineers and vice versa. So I think we're doing pretty well in both of those categories. We certainly are getting better with time, and we're not perfect yet, but we've done well. One area where I think we need to do better is in terms of recruiting people from the talent pool into our company. We've sort of relied on name power and people coming to us, and that has worked reasonably well, but I definitely see that as an area we can do more. So we're now starting to become more involved in organizations like Women in Aerospace and NSBE and other things like that. And again, if any of you have feedback on which of those organizations are the right ones, which ones are the conferences we need to be at, I'm all ears. That's something we're very actively looking at. And then finally, I'll wrap up because I want to get to the discussion in terms of training our own staff. We haven't come up with a great acronym like BLAST yet. We actually just call it Jedi Training, which don't tell J.J. Abrams or George Lucas. We probably should have gotten that run past the copyright attorney, but thankfully it's just an internal program where we are definitely doing our best to make sure that our early career hires, our people of all backgrounds, are better than they were the day they first showed up at work. You know, that's all about learning new skills. It's about practicing the old skills, but increasingly it's about learning new skills. So we do something called Jedi Training, where we bring in a lot of people, and whether it's reading books or putting them through the paces of exercises that make people uncomfortable, like public speaking, or whether it's doing things out on the shop floor, if maybe that isn't something that their day-to-day job requires. We like to give them a chance to go out and bend some metal, or in our case, lay some composites or whatever else it is. So all just little experiments that we're getting, I think, really good feedback for, and hopefully we'll be doing more in the future.